The sound of laughter drifted through the house as Lila turned her key in the front door. She had come home early from her business trip, eager to surprise Ryan with his favorite dinner and maybe rekindle the spark that seemed to be fading from their 5-year marriage. The laughter grew louder as she climbed the stairs, but something about it made her stomach twist. It wasn't Ryan's usual deep chuckle. This was higher, more musical. Female. Lila's hand froze on the bedroom door handle. Through the crack, she could see movement, hear whispers, and then Ryan's voice saying words she had never heard him say to her with such passion. Her heart hammered against her ribs as she pushed the door open just enough to see inside. There, in the bed she had picked out for their first anniversary, Ryan was tangled in the sheets with a blonde woman who looked nothing like her. The woman's pale skin contrasted sharply against Ryan's as they moved together, completely lost in each other. Lila's dark eyes took in every detail: the way Ryan's hands moved over the stranger's body, the way he kissed her neck, the way he looked at her like she was the most precious thing in the world. 5 years of marriage, and Lila had never seen that look directed at her. She stood there for what felt like hours but was probably only minutes, watching her husband make love to another woman in their bed. The betrayal cut through her like ice, freezing her from the inside out. Part of her wanted to scream, to throw things, to demand answers. But a larger part of her, the part that had survived a difficult childhood and built a successful marketing career from nothing, told her to be smart about this. Finally, she cleared her throat loudly. Ryan jerked up so fast he nearly fell off the bed. His face went white when he saw her standing in the doorway, still holding her suitcase. The blonde woman, pretty, young, probably in her early 20s, grabbed the sheet to cover herself, her blue eyes wide with shock. "Lila," Ryan stammered, his voice cracking like a teenager's. "I can explain." "No need," Lila said, her voice surprisingly steady. She was proud of how calm she sounded, even as her world crumbled around her. "I can see exactly what's happening." The blonde woman looked between them, clearly uncomfortable. "I should go," she whispered. "Yes," Lila agreed, never taking her eyes off Ryan. "You should." As the woman scrambled to gather her clothes, Ryan grabbed his boxers and stood up. "Lila, please let me." "Who is she?" Lila interrupted. "Her name is Sophia," he said reluctantly. "She works at the coffee shop downtown." Lila almost laughed at the cliché. Of course she did. "How long?" Ryan looked down at his feet. 3 months. 3 months. While Lila had been working overtime to save for their dream vacation to Italy. While she had been planning their 5th anniversary celebration. While she had been trying to figure out why he seemed so distant lately. Sophia finished dressing and hurried past Lila without making eye contact. The front door slammed a moment later, leaving them alone in the bedroom that would never feel the same again. "I'm sorry," Ryan said, and for the first time since she'd walked in, he sounded genuine. "I never meant for you to find out like this." "But you meant for it to happen," Lila said. "It wasn't a question." He ran his hands through his brown hair, making it stand up in all directions. "I was going to tell you. I was going to ask for a divorce." "Were you?" Lila set down her suitcase and sat on the edge of the bed, careful not to touch the rumpled sheets. "When? After your little girlfriend got bored and moved on?" "It's not like that," Ryan protested. "I love her." Those 3 words hit Lila harder than anything else he could have said. Not, "I'm confused," or, "I made a mistake," or even, "I don't love you anymore." He loved someone else. Someone young and blonde and nothing like the woman he had promised to love forever. "I see," she said quietly. Ryan sat down beside her, keeping his distance. "I know this is terrible timing and I know I handled this all wrong, but maybe it's better this way. Maybe now we can finally be honest about what our marriage has become." Lila looked at him, really looked at him for the first time in months. When had he stopped being the man she fell in love with? When had he started looking at her like she was a roommate instead of his wife? When had she become so busy with work that she didn't notice her husband falling in love with someone else? "You're right," she said finally. "It is better this way." Relief flickered across his face. "So we can talk about this like adults? Work out the details?" "Of course," Lila agreed. "I'll sleep in the guest room tonight. We can discuss everything tomorrow." Ryan nodded eagerly. "I know this is hard, but I think you'll be happier in the long run." "We both will." Lila stood up and picked up her suitcase. "I'm sure you're right." She left him sitting on their bed and walked down the hall to the guest room she had decorated for visitors who rarely came. As she closed the door behind her, she finally allowed herself to feel the full weight of what had just happened. Her marriage was over. The man she had loved for 7 years, dated for 2, married for 5, had been cheating on her for 3 months and was in love with someone else. But instead of crying, instead of falling apart, Lila felt something else entirely. A cold, calculating anger that settled in her chest like a stone. Ryan thought he could betray her, humiliate her, and then walk away clean. He thought she would just accept his apology and quietly agree to a divorce. He was wrong. As she lay in the unfamiliar bed, staring at the ceiling, Lila began to plan. She had built her marketing career by thinking 3 steps ahead of everyone else. She had survived her parents' messy divorce by being smarter than the adults around her. She had gotten through college on scholarships because she knew how to work the system. Ryan had made the biggest mistake of his life when he brought that woman to their bed. He just didn't know it yet. But he would. Lila woke up at 5:30, just like she had every morning for the past 5 years. The difference was that today she woke up with a purpose that had nothing to do with love and everything to do with justice. She could hear Ryan moving around in their bedroom, probably getting ready for his job at the architectural firm where he thought he was hot stuff because he designed strip malls and office buildings. She waited until she heard the shower running before she got up and dressed in her best business suit, the navy blue one that made her look both professional and intimidating. In the kitchen she made coffee and toast, setting out 2 cups like she always did. When Ryan came downstairs, his hair still damp and his face uncertain, she smiled at him. "Good morning," she said pleasantly. He looked surprised by her tone. "Morning. You're up early." "Couldn't sleep," she lied. She had slept better than she had in months. "Coffee? Thanks." He accepted the cup carefully, like he was afraid she might throw it at him. "About last night. We said we'd talk today," Lila reminded him. "But not now. I have an important meeting this morning." This was also a lie. Her first meeting wasn't until 10, but she had things to do first. "Okay," Ryan said, looking relieved to put off the conversation. "Maybe dinner?" "Perfect." Lila finished her coffee and picked up her purse. "Have a good day at work." She kissed his cheek like she always did and felt him relax slightly. Good. Let him think she was handling this maturely. Let him think she was going to make this easy for him. Her first stop was the bank. Lila had always handled their finances. Ryan claimed he was too busy with work to deal with money stuff, which had annoyed her but now seemed like a gift. She sat down with their personal banker, Mrs. Peterson, a woman in her 60s who had helped them buy their house. "I need to understand all of our accounts," Lila said. "Joint and individual. I'm doing some financial planning." Mrs. Peterson pulled up their information on her computer. "Well, you have your joint checking and savings, of course. Your individual checking account, and Ryan's individual checking. The joint investment account. Your 401k accounts are separate, obviously. What about the business account?" Lila asked. "Business account?" Mrs. Peterson looked confused. "I don't see a business account under either of your names." "Interesting. Last month, Ryan had mentioned something about opening an account for some freelance work he was doing. Apparently he had lied about that too." "Never mind," Lila said. "Can you print out statements for all the accounts?" "The last 6 months." "Of course." Mrs. Peterson hit some keys. "Is everything all right? You seem tense." "Just being thorough," Lila said with a smile. While she waited for the statements to print, Lila thought about what else she needed to do. She pulled out her phone and did a quick search for divorce lawyers in the city. One name kept coming up. James Bennett, a partner at Bennett and Associates who specialized in high-asset divorces and had a reputation for being ruthless but fair. She called his office from the bank parking lot. "Bennett and Associates, this is Sarah," came a cheerful voice. "I need to schedule a consultation with Mr. Bennett," Lila said. "As soon as possible. He has an opening this afternoon at 2:30. Would that work?" "Perfect." Back at home, Lila spread the bank statements across the dining room table. At first glance, everything looked normal. But as she studied the numbers more carefully, patterns began to emerge. Small amounts withdrawn from their joint account over the past 3 months, never more than $200 at a time, but frequent. Ryan was being smart about it, she had to give him that. The amounts were small enough that she wouldn't notice them in their regular budget. She added up the withdrawals. Over 3 months he had taken nearly $3,000 from their joint account. Money that should have been going toward their vacation fund, their emergency savings, their future. Money he was probably spending on Sophia. Lila felt that cold anger settle deeper in her chest. She took pictures of all the statements with her phone, then put them away before Ryan could come home for lunch, which he sometimes did. Her second stop was her office, where she had work to catch up on anyway. But first she did some research. Using her company's premium background check service justified as research for a client, which wasn't entirely false, she looked up everything she could find about Ryan Mitchell. What she found made her stomach turn. Ryan had a credit card she didn't know about. He had applied for it 6 months ago, using only his income and not mentioning that he was married. The current balance was over $8,000. Based on the transaction history she could see, he had been taking cash advances from this card to supplement the money he was stealing from their joint account. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was the address associated with the account. It wasn't their home address. It was an apartment complex across town, Unit 23B. Lila sat back in her office chair, pieces of the puzzle clicking into place. Ryan wasn't just cheating on her. He was planning to leave her. The apartment, the secret credit card, the gradual withdrawal of money from their joint account. He had been setting up his exit strategy for months. And he had been doing it with her money. She looked up the apartment complex online. It was nice, the kind of place a young woman like Sophia might live if she had help paying the rent. The kind of place Ryan might move to if he was planning to start over with someone new. Her phone buzzed with a text from Ryan. Coming home for lunch. Want me to pick up anything? Lila typed back, no thanks, eating at my desk today. Busy with the Johnson account. Another lie. But she was getting good at those. She spent her lunch hour driving past the apartment complex. Sure enough, Ryan's car was parked in the visitors section. Her hands tightened on the steering wheel as she imagined him inside, probably having lunch with Sophia, talking about their future together while his wife worked to pay for it. Back at the office she did more research. This time she looked up Sophia. It wasn't hard to find information about her. People her age posted everything online. Sophia Martinez, 23 years old, worked at Grind Coffee downtown, had a dog named Buster, and posted lots of pictures of expensive dinners and shopping trips that definitely weren't affordable on a coffee shop salary. In several recent photos, Lila could see masculine hands and arms, obviously cropped to hide the man's face. She recognized Ryan's watch in one photo, his shirt in another. The final piece of evidence came from Sophia's Venmo account, which was unfortunately public. Regular payments from RM over the past 3 months, always with cutesy captions like dinner money, and shopping fund, and just because. Ryan hadn't just been cheating on her. He had been financially supporting his girlfriend with money that belonged to both of them. By 2 o'clock, Lila had a folder full of evidence and a heart full of fury. She drove to the law offices of Bennett and Associates, a sleek building downtown that screamed money and power. James Bennett was not what she had expected. She had pictured someone older, maybe in his 60s with gray hair and an expensive suit. Instead, the man who greeted her in the consultation room was probably in his late 30s, with kind brown eyes and a handshake that was firm but not aggressive. Mrs. Mitchell, he said, gesturing for her to sit down. What can I do for you? I want a divorce, Lila said without preamble. And I want to make sure my husband doesn't get away with stealing from me. James raised an eyebrow. Why don't you start from the beginning? So she did. She told him about finding Ryan with Sophia, about the secret credit card in the hidden apartment, about the money being taken from their joint account. She showed him the bank statements, the credit report, the social media evidence. James listened without interrupting, taking notes occasionally. When she finished, he sat back in his chair. This is quite thorough, he said, sounding impressed. How long did it take you to gather all this? About 6 hours. You work fast. He smiled slightly. What outcome are you looking for here? I want him to pay for what he's done, Lila said. Not just the divorce. I want him to face consequences for stealing from me, for lying to me, for humiliating me. We can definitely pursue asset recovery for the money he took, James said. As for the rest, the best revenge in a situation like this is usually living well. But I understand you're angry. I'm not just angry, Lila corrected. I'm done being the woman who gets stepped on. I've been accommodating and understanding our entire marriage, and this is what it got me. James nodded. I can work with that. But I need to know, are you sure you want to proceed? Once we file papers, there's no going back. Lila thought about Ryan, probably still at the apartment with Sophia, planning their future together. She thought about the money he had stolen, the lies he had told, the way he had looked at another woman in their bed. I'm sure, she said. Then let's begin. James Bennett had been practicing family law for 12 years, and he had learned to read his clients quickly. Some came to him broken and looking for someone to save them. Others came seeking revenge but lost their nerve when things got complicated. Lila Mitchell was different. She sat across from his desk with perfect posture, her dark hands folded neatly in her lap, and spoke about her husband's betrayal with the same calm professionalism she probably used in business meetings. But her eyes told a different story. They burned with an intelligence and determination that told him this woman was not going to be anyone's victim. "The first thing we need to discuss is strategy," James said, pulling out a legal pad. "Divorce proceedings in this state can be contested or uncontested. Given what you've told me about your husband's behavior, I'm assuming he's going to fight us on asset division." "He doesn't know I know about the money yet," Lila said. "Or the apartment. He thinks I'm going to be reasonable about everything." "That works in our favor," James said. "The element of surprise is powerful in negotiations. But I need to ask, are you absolutely certain you want to pursue this aggressively? Sometimes it's cheaper and easier to just split things down the middle and walk away." Lila shook her head. "He stole from me. From our joint account, from our future together. If I let him get away with it, I'm basically paying him to cheat on me." James made a note. She had a point and her evidence was solid. "Okay, here's what I recommend. We file for divorce citing irreconcilable differences. No need to get into the adultery issue unless we have to, it just complicates things. But we also file a motion for temporary support and asset protection." "What does that mean?" "It means we freeze all joint accounts and credit cards immediately. He won't be able to take any more money out. We also request temporary alimony and that he maintain the house payments and insurance until everything is settled." Lila looked surprised. "Alimony? But I make almost as much as he does." "You make almost as much, but you've been contributing more to the household expenses while he's been spending money on his girlfriend. That's going to work in our favor." James leaned forward. "Mrs. Mitchell, I know this is hard, but I need you to think about what you want your life to look like after this is over. Do you want to keep the house?" "Yes," she said without hesitation. "I picked it out, I decorated it, I've maintained it. It's mine." "Then we'll argue for that too. What about his retirement accounts?" "I want half of everything he earned while we were married," Lila said. "I supported his career, I managed our household, I made sacrifices so he could take the job he wanted. I'm entitled to half." James nodded approvingly. "Now you're thinking like someone who's going to win." They spent the next hour going over details. Joint debts, individual debts, the mortgage, their cars, even their furniture. James explained the process, the timeline, and what she could expect. "One more thing," he said as they wrapped up. "I need to ask about children." "We don't have any," Lila said, and for the first time, her voice wavered slightly. "We were trying, but it never happened. Ryan said we had plenty of time." James made another note. The absence of children would make the divorce simpler legally, but he could see it was another layer of pain for his client. She had been planning a future that would never exist. "We'll file the papers tomorrow," he said. "I'll have them served at his workplace so he can't claim he didn't receive them. That also means he'll be dealing with the embarrassment of being served at work, which might motivate him to settle quickly." "Good," Lila said with satisfaction. "Mrs. Mitchell," James said as she gathered her purse to leave. "I have to ask, you seem very calm about all this. Are you sure you're processing what's happening?" Lila paused at the door. "Mr. Bennett, I spent 12 years in corporate marketing. I've learned that emotional reactions rarely lead to good outcomes. I'll have my breakdown after I win." After she left, James sat in his office thinking about his new client. In his experience, the spouses who handled betrayal with this kind of calculated precision were usually the ones who came out ahead. Ryan Mitchell had no idea what was about to hit him. The next morning, James filed the divorce papers and the motion for temporary orders. By noon, a process server was on his way to Ryan's architectural firm. Lila spent the day at work trying to focus on her actual job while her phone stayed silent. She had given James her personal cell number and asked him to text her when the papers were served. The text came at 2:47 p.m., package delivered. 20 minutes later, her phone rang. Ryan's name appeared on the screen. "Lila, what the hell is this?" His voice was shaking with anger and shock. "Divorce papers," she said calmly. "I thought that was obvious. You had me served at work. Do you have any idea how embarrassing?" "About as embarrassing as finding your husband in bed with another woman," Lila interrupted. There was silence on the other end of the line. "We need to talk," Ryan said finally. "We do. But not over the phone. Can you be home by 6? "Yes, but Lila." 6 o'clock, she repeated and hung up. She spent the rest of the afternoon at her desk but couldn't concentrate on anything. Her coworkers probably thought she was having an off day. If only they knew. At 5:30 she drove home, stopping at the grocery store to pick up ingredients for Ryan's favorite meal. Let him think she was still the accommodating wife he expected her to be. Let him think this was all some kind of emotional reaction that he could smooth over with apologies and promises. Ryan's car was already in the driveway when she got home. She found him in the living room, pacing back and forth with the divorce papers in his hand. "Lila, thank God," he said when she walked in. "We need to sort this out. You're being irrational." "Am I?" She set down her grocery bags and turned to face him. "Tell me, Ryan, what's irrational about divorcing a cheating husband?" "It's not that simple," he protested. "Yes, I made a mistake, but we can work through this. We've been together for 7 years. That has to count for something." "It did count for something," Lila agreed. "Right up until you decided to throw it away for a 23-year-old barista." Ryan's face flushed. "How did you never mind? The point is we can fix this. We can go to counseling, we can work on our marriage." "Can we?" Lila crossed her arms. "While you're living in an apartment with your girlfriend?" The color drained from his face. "I don't know what you think you know." "I know about apartment 23B at the Meadowbrook complex," Lila said. "I know about the credit card you opened without telling me. I know about the $3,000 you've stolen from our joint account over the past 3 months. Ryan sank onto the couch like someone had cut his strings. "You've been investigating me?" "I've been uncovering the truth," Lila corrected. "Something you couldn't be bothered to tell me yourself." "Okay," Ryan said, running his hands through his hair. "Yes, I rented an apartment. But it was because I needed space to think. And yes, I helped Sophia with some expenses, but she's struggling financially." "With my money," Lila said. "With our money," Ryan corrected. "We're married, Lila. What's mine is yours and what's yours is mine, right?" "Wrong." Lila pulled out her phone and showed him a text from James. "As of this afternoon, all our joint accounts are frozen. You can't take any more money out of them without court approval." Ryan stared at the phone screen. "You can't be serious." "Dead serious." Lila put the phone away. "I'm making dinner. We can talk more while we eat." She left him sitting in the living room looking shell-shocked and went to the kitchen. As she cooked his favorite meal, pot roast with mashed potatoes and green beans, she felt a strange sense of peace. For the first time in months, maybe years, she felt like she was in control of her own life. When she called him to dinner, Ryan came to the table looking like a man who had aged 5 years in one afternoon. "Lila," he said as she served him, "I know I messed up, but you're my wife. We can get through this." "No," she said quietly. "We can't." "Why not?" "People recover from affairs all the time." Lila sat down across from him. "Because you didn't just have an affair, Ryan. You planned to leave me. The apartment, the secret credit card, the gradual withdrawal of money, you've been setting up your new life for months. You just got caught before you could make your grand exit." Ryan stared down at his plate. "I was going to tell you." "When?" "After you moved in with her permanently? After you'd stolen enough money to set up your new life." "It wasn't like that," he said weakly. "Then what was it like?" Lila asked. "Explain it to me. Make me understand how the man I loved could betray me so completely." Ryan looked up at her, and for a moment she saw something that might have been genuine remorse in his eyes. "I felt trapped," he admitted. "Like we were just going through the motions. We both work all the time, we barely talk anymore, we haven't been intimate in months. So you decided the solution was to find someone new instead of working on our marriage?" "I tried to work on it," Ryan protested. "I suggested date nights, weekend trips, couples activities. You were always too busy with work." Lila felt a flicker of guilt, then pushed it away. "So that gave you the right to cheat?" "No," Ryan said quietly. "No, it didn't." They ate in silence for a few minutes. Finally Ryan spoke again. "What do you want, Lila?" "Money? The house. I'll give you whatever you want if we can just end this amicably." "I want justice," she said. "I want you to face consequences for what you've done." "What does that mean?" Lila looked at her husband's soon-to-be ex-husband and felt nothing but pity. He still didn't understand what he had lost. "It means you're about to find out what happens when you bet against the wrong woman," she said. 3 days after the divorce papers were served, Lila sat in another unfamiliar office, this one belonging to Elena Rodriguez, a private investigator James had recommended. Elena was a woman in her 40s with short black hair and sharp eyes that seemed to take in everything at once. "I've reviewed the materials your lawyer sent over," Elena said, tapping a file folder on her desk. "You've done impressive work already. Most people don't think to gather this much evidence before they hire professional help." "I want it to be thorough," Lila said. "Smart. But I think there's more to uncover here." Elena opened the file and pulled out a photograph. "This is your husband's girlfriend, right? Sophia Martinez?" Lila nodded, looking at the picture Elena had somehow obtained. It showed Sophia leaving the coffee shop where she worked, looking young and carefree. I did some preliminary research on Ms. Martinez, Elena continued. She's interesting. 23 years old, dropped out of college after her freshman year, moved here from Phoenix about 8 months ago. She has no family in the area, no close friends that I can identify, and she's been working at Grind Coffee for exactly 7 months. What's interesting about that? The timeline, Elena said. She moved here 8 months ago, started working 7 months ago, and began her relationship with your husband 3 months ago. That suggests she was here for a month before she got the job, which is unusual for someone with her financial situation. Elena pulled out another document. Here's what's really interesting. Ms. Martinez has been receiving regular deposits into her bank account for the past 7 months. Not just from your husband, those only started 3 months ago. There's another source, someone who's been supporting her since she arrived in town. Lila felt her stomach drop. Someone else is giving her money? A lot of money. We're talking about $1,500 a month, every month, from an account registered to something called ML Consulting. ML Consulting? Lila frowned. That doesn't sound familiar. It shouldn't. The company was formed 6 months ago, has no employees, no office, and no apparent business activity except for these monthly payments to Sophia Martinez. Elena leaned forward. Mrs. Mitchell, I think your husband's affair might not be as spontaneous as it appears. What do you mean? I mean someone has been paying Ms. Martinez to be available, and I don't think it's for her coffee-making skills. Elena pulled out another photograph, this one showing Sophia at an expensive restaurant. This picture was taken 5 months ago, 2 months before she started seeing your husband. She's with an older man, someone I haven't identified yet. Lila stared at the photo. You think she's some kind of professional? I think she's being paid to seduce married men, Elena said bluntly. The question is why and by whom? The room seemed to spin around Lila. But Ryan said he met her at the coffee shop. That it just happened naturally. Maybe it did from his perspective, Elena said. But I don't believe in coincidences. A young, attractive woman moves to town, gets a job at a coffee shop near your husband's office, and just happens to catch his eye? Right when your marriage is going through a rough patch. How did you know our marriage was having problems? Elena smiled slightly. Because affairs like this don't happen in happy marriages. Someone knew your husband was vulnerable, and they provided him with exactly what he was looking for. Lila felt sick. Who would do something like that? That's what we need to find out. In my experience, this kind of elaborate setup usually comes from one of two places: a business rival or someone with a personal grudge. A business rival? Lila tried to think. Ryan designs buildings. Who would care that much about his career? Maybe someone who lost out on a big project? Someone he beat for a promotion? A former colleague who felt wronged. Elena made notes as she talked. What about personal grudges? Ex-girlfriends, family disputes, anything like that? Lila shook her head. Ryan doesn't really have enemies. He's always been the type to avoid conflict. Well, he has at least one enemy now, Elena said dryly. The question is whether they created this situation or just took advantage of it. They spent the next hour going over every detail of Ryan's life that Lila could remember. His job, his colleagues, his friends, his family. Elena took notes on everything, asking probing questions that made Lila see her husband's life from a different angle. I want to expand the investigation, Elena said finally. Look into his work history, his finances going back further, maybe talk to some of his colleagues unofficially. How much will that cost? More than the basic investigation, but probably less than what you're going to spend on legal fees if this divorce gets complicated. Elena looked at her seriously. Mrs. Mitchell, if someone set your husband up, they did it for a reason. Understanding that reason might be crucial to protecting yourself. Lila nodded. Do it. I'll need a retainer, Elena said, sliding a contract across the desk. And I'll need you to be prepared for whatever we find. Sometimes the truth is worse than the lie. It can't be worse than what I already know, Lila said, signing the contract. Elena gave her a look that said she'd heard that before and it was usually wrong. Over the next week, Lila tried to maintain some semblance of normalcy. She went to work, she attended meetings, she smiled and made small talk with her colleagues. But inside, she felt like she was waiting for a bomb to explode. Ryan had moved out the day after their dinner conversation, taking only his clothes and personal items. He'd left behind the furniture, the wedding photos, even his favorite coffee mug. Lila didn't know if he was trying to make some kind of statement or if he genuinely thought he might be coming back. She changed the locks anyway. James called twice to update her on the legal proceedings. Ryan had hired his own lawyer, a man named Tom Peterson who specialized in helping wealthy men minimize their losses in divorce. The fact that Ryan could afford Peterson's fees told Lila he had access to money she didn't know about. He's fighting the asset freeze, James told her during their second conversation. His lawyer is claiming financial hardship. Financial hardship? Lila almost laughed. He's been spending thousands of dollars on his girlfriend. That's what we'll argue in court. But Mrs. Mitchell, I need to prepare you for the possibility that this is going to get ugly. Peterson doesn't play nice. Neither do I, Lila said. Elena called on Thursday with an update that made Lila's blood run cold. I found the connection, Elena said without preamble. Can you meet me at my office in an hour? Lila left work early, claiming a dentist appointment, and drove to Elena's office with her heart pounding. The investigator was waiting for her with a thick file and a grim expression. Sit down, Elena said. This is going to be a lot to process. She opened the file and pulled out a photograph of a man in his 50s with silver hair and an expensive suit. Do you recognize him? Lila studied the picture. There was something familiar about the man's face, but she couldn't place him. I don't think so. Should I? His name is Richard Blackwood. He's the CEO of Blackwood Development, one of the largest commercial real estate companies in the state. Okay, Lila said slowly. What does he have to do with Ryan? Elena pulled out another document. 3 years ago, your husband's firm competed for a major project downtown. A $50 million mixed-use development that would have made Ryan's career. The project went to Blackwood Development instead. That happens in business, Lila said. You win some, you lose some. Except Ryan didn't just lose, Elena continued. He accused Blackwood of bribing city officials to get the contract. He filed complaints with the City Planning Commission, the State Attorney General, and the FBI. Lila felt the blood drain from her face. He what? The investigation lasted 6 months and found no evidence of wrongdoing. Blackwood was cleared of all charges, but the publicity cost them 2 other major contracts and millions of dollars in lost revenue. Elena pulled out a newspaper clipping. Blackwood held a press conference after the investigation concluded. He specifically named your husband as someone who had made malicious and unfounded accusations that had damaged his company's reputation. Ryan never told me about any of this, Lila whispered. After the investigation ended, your husband's firm quietly let him go. They couldn't afford to keep someone who might bring that kind of negative attention to their business. Ryan was unemployed for 4 months before he got his current job. Now Lila understood why Ryan had been so stressed 3 years ago, why he'd been distant and angry and impossible to talk to. She thought it was work pressure. She'd never imagined he was fighting a legal battle that could have destroyed his career. So Blackwood has a grudge against Ryan, she said. A big one. And he has the resources to act on it. Elena pulled out bank records. ML Consulting, the company that's been paying Sofia Martinez, is owned by a shell corporation, which is owned by another shell corporation, which eventually traces back to an account controlled by Richard Blackwood. He's been paying her to seduce my husband? For 7 months, yes. Long before she ever met Ryan. Elena leaned forward. Mrs. Mitchell, I think Richard Blackwood has been planning this for a long time. He wanted to destroy your husband's marriage, his reputation, maybe his career. But why now? It's been 3 years since the accusation. Because revenge is a dish best served cold, Elena said. Blackwood waited until Ryan seemed settled and happy, until he had something to lose. Then he struck. Lila stared at the documents spread across Elena's desk. The photographs, the bank records, the timeline that showed how carefully this had all been orchestrated. What kind of person does something like this? Someone with a lot of money and a lot of patience, Elena said. Someone who believes your husband cost him millions of dollars and wants to make him pay. So Ryan is a victim too? Elena paused. He's a victim of the setup, yes. But Mrs. Mitchell, he still made the choice to cheat. He still chose to steal money from your joint account and lie to you for months. Whatever Blackwood's motives, your husband is still responsible for his own actions. Lila nodded slowly. Elena was right. Even if Sofia had been paid to seduce him, Ryan had been a willing participant. He could have said no. He could have told Lila about the attractive woman who was flirting with him. He could have been honest. Instead, he had betrayed their marriage and stolen their money. What do we do with this information? Lila asked. That depends on what you want, Elena said. We could expose Blackwood's scheme. It might help your husband in the divorce proceedings if we can prove he was manipulated. Would it help me? Elena considered this. Probably not. And it might make Blackwood turn his attention to you. What do you mean? I mean he's already destroyed one marriage. If he sees you as a threat, he might decide to destroy your career too. Lila felt a chill run down her spine. She thought about her job, her reputation, the life she had built for herself. Was she willing to risk all of that to expose a man who had more money and power than she could imagine? There's another option, Elena said quietly. What? We keep this information to ourselves for now. Use it as leverage if we need to, but don't expose Blackwood unless he forces our hand. Leverage how? Elena smiled grimly. Mrs. Mitchell, you now know about a conspiracy to destroy someone's marriage. That's valuable information. Richard Blackwood probably wouldn't want it to become public, especially since he used his company's resources to fund it. Lila understood. She had ammunition now, but she had to be careful how she used it. I need time to think about this, she said. Of course. But while you're thinking, I'm going to keep digging. There might be other victims, other marriages Blackwood has targeted. Other victims? A man with this much anger and this many resources rarely stops at one target, Elena said. If I'm right, your husband might not be the only person whose life Blackwood has tried to destroy. As Lila drove home, her mind raced with the implications of what she had learned. Her husband's affair wasn't just a betrayal, it was part of an elaborate revenge scheme orchestrated by a powerful man with unlimited resources. But it didn't change the fundamental facts. Ryan had still cheated. He had still lied. He had still stolen money from their joint account to support his girlfriend. Whatever game Richard Blackwood was playing, Ryan had chosen to be a willing participant. And Lila was going to make sure he paid the price for that choice. The revelation about Richard Blackwood changed everything and nothing at the same time. Lila spent the weekend in her empty house, pacing from room to room as she tried to process what Elena had discovered. On one hand, knowing that Ryan had been manipulated made her feel a tiny bit of sympathy for him. On the other hand, he had still made the choice to betray their marriage. Monday morning brought a call from James with news that made her forget all about sympathy. We have a problem, he said without preamble. Ryan's lawyer filed a motion claiming you've been hiding assets. What assets? Lila demanded. He's the one with the secret credit card and the hidden apartment. That's what I told them, but Peterson is claiming you have a business account they weren't told about. Something about consulting work you've been doing on the side. Lila's blood went cold. She did have consulting income. She helped small businesses with their marketing strategies on weekends and evenings. It was perfectly legal and above board, but she had been keeping the money in a separate account to save for a surprise vacation for their anniversary. The anniversary that would never come. I do have consulting income, she admitted. But it's not hidden. I have records of everything. How much are we talking about? About $15,000 over the past 2 years. James sighed. Mrs. Mitchell, why didn't you tell me about this? Because it's my money, Lila said. I earned it outside of my regular job and I was saving it for something special. In a marriage, there's no such thing as your money, James reminded her. Everything earned during the marriage is considered marital property. Then why is it okay for Ryan to have a secret credit card? It's not okay. But now his lawyer is going to argue that you're both hiding assets, which makes you look just as guilty as he is. Lila wanted to scream. Instead, she took a deep breath and forced herself to think clearly. What do? We disclose the account immediately and argue that you were saving the money for marital purposes. Do you have any evidence of that? Emails about vacation planning, research on anniversary trips, anything like that? Actually, yes. Lila remembered the folder on her computer where she'd been collecting information about a trip to Italy. I was planning a surprise trip for our 5th anniversary. Perfect. Get me everything you have, and we'll file an amended financial disclosure today. After she hung up, Lila sat at her kitchen table feeling frustrated and cornered. Every time she tried to do the right thing, Ryan and his lawyer found a way to make her look bad. It was like being punished for being organized and responsible. Her phone buzzed with a text from Elena. Need to see you, S.A. Found something big. An hour later, Lila was back in Elena's office, looking at a stack of photographs and documents that made her stomach turn. I told you I thought there might be other victims, Elena said. I was right. She spread out 3 photographs of women, all young and attractive, all looking like they could be Sophia's sisters. Meet Jennifer Walsh, Katie Chin, and Nicole Thompson. All between the ages of 22 and 25, all connected to Richard Blackwood through the same web of shell companies. He's paying all of them? He was. Jennifer received payments for 8 months before they stopped 18 months ago. Katie got money for 6 months, ending about a year ago. Nicole's payments ended 6 months ago. Elena pulled out more documents. I tracked down their stories. Jennifer was involved with a city councilman who had opposed one of Blackwood's development projects. The affair destroyed his marriage and his political career. Katie seduced a bank executive who had turned down Blackwood's loan application. Nicole targeted a journalist who had written negative articles about Blackwood's business practices. Lila stared at the photos. All of these women destroyed marriages? All of them were involved in affairs that became public and ruined the men's careers and reputations, Elena confirmed. The pattern is always the same. Young, attractive woman moves to town, gets a job near the target's workplace, initiates a relationship, and then the affair becomes public in the most damaging way possible. How does it become public? Elena smiled grimly. That's the interesting part. In each case, the wife accidentally discovered evidence of the affair. Photos left where she would find them, hotel receipts in jacket pockets, text messages sent to the wrong number. You think Blackwood arranged for the wives to find out? I think Blackwood's plan was for you to discover Ryan's affair in a way that would maximize the public humiliation, Elena said. The fact that you came home early and caught them in bed was probably not part of the original plan. Lila thought about that night, about the sound of laughter that had made her climb the stairs instead of calling out that she was home. What was the original plan? Based on the other cases, probably photographs sent to your workplace or your email. Maybe a concerned friend, calling to tell you what your husband was doing. Something that would ensure the maximum number of people knew about it. So by catching them myself, I actually prevented some of the humiliation? You took control of the narrative, Elena agreed, which probably threw off Blackwood's timeline. Elena pulled out one more photograph. This one showed Sophia with an older man in an expensive restaurant. This picture was taken 2 weeks ago. Sophia is still receiving payments from Blackwood, even though her relationship with your husband is public knowledge. Why would he keep paying her? Because the job isn't finished yet, Elena said ominously. Mrs. Mitchell, I think Blackwood expected your husband's affair to become a public scandal. When that didn't happen, he probably ordered Sophia to make it happen. What do you mean? I mean, be prepared for this story to become public. Photos of your husband with his girlfriend, details about the affair, maybe even information about the divorce proceedings. Lila felt panic rising in her chest. My job, my reputation. We'll survive, Elena said firmly. You're the victim here, remember? But your husband's career might not. Good, Lila said, surprising herself with the venom in her voice. Elena raised an eyebrow. Are you sure you want to say that? If Blackwood destroys your husband's career, it affects your divorce settlement. Hard to get alimony from someone who can't find work. Lila hadn't thought of that. Her desire for revenge might end up costing her money. There's something else, Elena said. I think we can prove that Blackwood has been running this operation for years. If we can connect him to all these affairs, we might be able to bring criminal charges. What kind of charges? Conspiracy, fraud, possibly extortion. Using interstate commerce to interfere with personal relationships. There are several federal laws that might apply. But that would mean going up against someone with unlimited resources and political connections. Yes, Elena said. It would. Lila stared at the photographs of the young women who had been paid to destroy marriages. How many lives had Richard Blackwood ruined in his quest for revenge? How many families had he torn apart? I need to think about this, she said. Of course. But while you're thinking, consider this. If we don't stop him, he's going to keep doing this to other people. As Lila drove home, she thought about the choice in front of her. She could focus on her divorce, take whatever settlement she could get, and try to rebuild her life quietly. Or she could fight back against a man who thought he could destroy people's lives without consequences. The safe choice was obvious. The smart choice was to keep her head down and protect herself. But Lila had never been content with safe choices. That evening she called James and told him about Elena's discoveries. Jesus, he said when she finished. This is bigger than a divorce case. I know. What do you think I should do? James was quiet for a long moment. As your lawyer, I have to advise you to be careful. Blackwood has the resources to make your life very difficult if he sees you as a threat. And as a person? As a person, I think someone needs to stop this guy before he destroys more families. Would you help me? If I decided to fight back. Mrs. Mitchell, I'm a divorce lawyer, not a criminal attorney. But I know someone who specializes in this kind of case. Someone who's not afraid of powerful defendants. Set up a meeting, Lila said. Are you sure? Once we take this step, there's no going back. Lila thought about the photographs of the other women, about the families that had been destroyed, about Ryan sitting in his apartment with a girlfriend who was paid to seduce him. I'm sure, she said. Then let's make Richard Blackwood regret the day he decided to mess with your marriage. The meeting with the criminal attorney was scheduled for Friday afternoon. His name was Marcus Webb, and according to James, he had made a career out of taking on wealthy defendants who thought they were untouchable. Lila spent Thursday night preparing, organizing all of Elena's evidence into a presentation that would make the case against Richard Blackwood clear and compelling. She never made it to the meeting. Thursday night at 11 p.m., as Lila sat at her kitchen table reviewing documents, her doorbell rang. She wasn't expecting anyone, and her friends knew better than to drop by unannounced during her divorce proceedings. Through the window she could see a man in an expensive suit standing on her porch. She didn't recognize him, but something about his posture made her nervous. Instead of opening the door, she called out through it. Can I help you? Mrs. Mitchell? My name is David Harrison. I work for Richard Blackwood. I'd like to speak with you about a matter of mutual interest. Lila's blood went cold. I don't have anything to discuss with Mr. Blackwood. I think you do, Harrison said pleasantly. Perhaps we could speak privately? I have information about your husband that you might find illuminating. Whatever you have to say, you can say it through my lawyer. Mrs. Mitchell, I really think you should hear what I have to say. It concerns your safety. That got her attention. My safety. Your husband is not the man you think he is. There are things about his past, about why he really lost his previous job, that you should know. Lila hesitated. She knew Harrison was probably lying, trying to manipulate her just like Blackwood had manipulated Ryan. But what if he wasn't? What if there were things about Ryan that even Elena hadn't discovered? Give me 5 minutes, Harrison said. If you don't want to hear more after that, I'll leave. Against her better judgment, Lila opened the door. Harrison was younger than she'd expected, probably in his 30s, with perfectly styled hair and the kind of smile that didn't reach his eyes. He stepped into her living room and looked around approvingly. Nice house, he said. You've made a comfortable life for yourself. You said you had information about my husband. Right to business. I like that. Harrison sat down on her couch without being invited. Mrs. Mitchell, what do you know about your husband's accusation against my employer? I know he accused Mr. Blackwood of bribery and was proven wrong. That's the official story, Harrison agreed. But the truth is more complicated. Your husband didn't just make accusations. He fabricated evidence. That's not possible. Harrison pulled out a folder and opened it on her coffee table. These are copies of documents your husband submitted to the FBI. Internal emails supposedly from Blackwood Development employees, financial records, meeting notes. All of them fake. Lila looked at the documents. They looked official to her, but she wasn't an expert. How do you know they're fake? Because we never sent those emails, never held those meetings, never created those financial records. Your husband created them himself to support his accusations. Why would he do that? Because he was desperate, Harrison said. His firm was struggling financially, and he needed a scapegoat for losing the contract. He thought if he could prove corruption, it would make him look like a hero instead of a failure. Lila shook her head. Ryan isn't that kind of person. Isn't he? Harrison pulled out more documents. Did you know your husband was arrested for fraud in college? The charges were dropped because it was his first offense, but the record exists. This time the documents looked official. Court records, police reports, academic transcripts that showed Ryan had been suspended from college for 1 semester. Lila had never heard any of this. I don't believe you, she said, but her voice lacked conviction. Mrs. Mitchell, your husband is a con artist. He's been lying to you for your entire marriage. The accusation against my employer was just the latest in a pattern of deception and fraud. Harrison leaned forward. But here's the thing, Mr. Blackwood is willing to let bygones be bygones. He's prepared to make you a very generous offer. What kind of offer? $1 million, Harrison said simply. Tax-free, deposited into any account you choose. All you have to do is disappear. Disappear? Leave town. Start over somewhere else. Make a new life for yourself away from your husband and all of this unpleasantness. Lila stared at him. You want to pay me to run away? We want to pay you to be smart, Harrison corrected. Your husband is going down, Mrs. Mitchell. The fraud charges from college are just the beginning. We have evidence of other crimes, Other lies. When we're finished with him, he won't just lose his job, he'll go to prison. You're threatening him. We're exposing him, Harrison said. But you don't have to go down with him. Take the money, start fresh somewhere else. Find a man who deserves you. Lila felt sick. The documents in front of her painted a picture of Ryan as a serial liar and fraud. If they were true, her entire marriage had been built on deception. If they were false, then Blackwood was even more dangerous than she had imagined. I need time to think about this, she said. Of course. Harrison closed the folder and stood up. But don't take too long. Mr. Blackwood's patience has limits. He left his business card on her coffee table and showed himself out. Lila sat alone in her living room, staring at the documents and trying to make sense of what had just happened. Were the documents real? Had Ryan been lying to her about his past? Or was this just another layer of Blackwood's manipulation? She called Elena, but it went straight to voicemail. She tried James, but he didn't answer either. It was almost midnight, normal people were asleep. Unable to sit still, Lila got in her car and drove to Ryan's apartment. She needed to look him in the eyes and ask him directly about the college arrest, about the fabricated evidence, about whatever else he might have been hiding from her. The apartment complex was quiet, most of the windows dark. But there was a light on in Unit 23B, and she could see shadows moving behind the curtains. Ryan was awake, probably with Sophia. Lila sat in her car for 20 minutes, working up the courage to knock on the door. Finally, she got out and walked to the apartment. She could hear voices inside, Ryan and Sophia talking quietly. She raised her hand to knock, then froze when she heard what they were saying. Told you this would happen, Sophia was saying. She's getting suspicious. Maybe we should just tell her the truth. We can't, Ryan replied. Not yet. There's too much money at stake. How much money? Enough to set us up for life if we do this right. Lila pressed her ear to the door, her heart pounding. I don't like lying to her, Sophia said. She seems like a nice person. She is a nice person, Ryan agreed. That's what makes this so hard. But Blackwood was right, sometimes you have to hurt good people to stop bad things from happening. Lila stumbled backward from the door. Ryan and Sophia were working together, but not the way she had thought. They weren't just having an affair, they were part of Blackwood's plan. But Ryan's words suggested he thought he was protecting her from something. What could be so bad that he would destroy their marriage to keep her safe? She got back in her car and drove home in a daze. Nothing made sense anymore. Was Ryan a victim or a conspirator? Was Sophia really Blackwood's employee, or was she something else entirely? At home, Lila packed a suitcase with shaking hands. She didn't know who to trust anymore, but she knew she wasn't safe. Blackwood had found her house, sent a man to threaten her, offered her money to disappear. Whether Ryan was protecting her or betraying her, she needed to get away from both of them. She left a note on the kitchen table, "Gone to think. Don't look for me." Then she got in her car and drove into the night, with no destination in mind except away. She didn't know that within hours her disappearance would set in motion events that would destroy everything Richard Blackwood had worked for. And she didn't know that Ryan, for all his lies and betrayals, had been trying to save her life. Ryan found the note Friday morning when he came to the house to pick up more of his belongings. He had been avoiding Lila since the divorce papers were served, giving her space to process everything and hoping she would eventually agree to an amicable settlement. The note on the kitchen table made his blood turn to ice. Gone to think. Don't look for me. He called her cell phone immediately. Straight to voicemail. He tried her office, she hadn't shown up for work and hadn't called in sick. He drove to her sister's house in the next town, but Lila wasn't there either. By Friday afternoon, Ryan was in full panic mode. He called James Bennett, who was also concerned about his client's sudden disappearance. When did you last speak to her? James asked. Tuesday night, Ryan said. We talked about the financial disclosure issue. She seemed angry but not like she was planning to disappear. Mr. Mitchell, is there anything you haven't told me about your situation? Any reason your wife might feel she was in danger? Ryan hesitated. There was a lot he hadn't told anyone, but he couldn't explain it without making everything worse. It's complicated. Uncomplicated, James said sharply. My client is missing, and you're the most likely person to know why. That's when Ryan made the decision that would change everything. He told James about Richard Blackwood, about the real reason he had lost his previous job, about the deal he had made to protect Lila. James listened in stunned silence as Ryan explained how Blackwood had approached him 6 months ago with an ultimatum. Participate in the staged affair, or watch Lila's career be destroyed by fabricated evidence of corporate espionage. You're telling me you agreed to cheat on your wife to protect her? James said when Ryan finished. Blackwood showed me documents that would have made it look like Lila was stealing client information and selling it to competitors. Her career would have been over, and she probably would have faced criminal charges. Were the documents real? No, but they looked real. Good enough to fool a jury. Ryan ran his hands through his hair. Blackwood said if I went along with the affair, let it become public and destroy my reputation, he would leave Lila alone. So Sophia was an actress, paid to seduce me and make it look convincing. Ryan's voice was full of self-loathing. I thought I was saving Lila's life. Instead, I destroyed our marriage for nothing. James was quiet for a long moment. Mr. Mitchell, you realize this changes everything about your divorce case? I don't care about the divorce case, Ryan said desperately. I just want to make sure Lila is safe. If what you're telling me is true, she might not be safe. Blackwood has a lot to lose if this comes out. That's when Ryan told James about the phone call he had received that morning. David Harrison had called to inform him that Lila had decided to accept Mr. Blackwood's generous offer, and would be starting fresh in a new location. He made it sound like she took money to disappear, Ryan said. But I know Lila. She would never do that. James felt sick. Mr. Mitchell, I think we need to call the police. With what evidence? Blackwood is too careful to leave a paper trail. Then we call Elena Rodriguez. Your wife hired a private investigator who's been looking into Blackwood's activities. They met Elena at her office an hour later. When Ryan finished his story, Elena just shook her head. You idiot, she said bluntly. Do you have any idea what you've done? I was trying to protect her. You were helping a man who has been destroying marriages for years. Elena pulled out files on Jennifer, Katie, and Nicole. Did you think you were special? Did you think Blackwood would just let you walk away after this was over? Ryan stared at the photographs of the other women, the other men whose lives had been destroyed. I didn't know about the others. Of course you didn't. Blackwood probably told you that you were the only one, that this was a special situation. Elena leaned forward. Mr. Mitchell, your wife has been investigating Blackwood for weeks. She knows about the other victims, the shell companies, the payments to Sophia. She was planning to expose him. What? James spoke up. Your wife wasn't just fighting for a divorce settlement. She was building a criminal case against Richard Blackwood. Ryan felt like the world was spinning around him. She knows? About all of it? She knows about the affair, the manipulation, probably even about you being coerced, Elena said. What she doesn't know is that you were trying to protect her. Then where is she? Elena and James exchanged a look. Mr. Mitchell, James said carefully, we think she's planning to take down Blackwood herself. What does that mean? It means she's probably going to do something dangerous and stupid, Elena said. And if Blackwood realizes she's a threat, he's going to try to stop her. Ryan felt panic rising in his chest. We have to find her. We will, Elena said. But first you need to tell us everything. Every conversation with Blackwood or his people, every instruction they gave you, every detail about how this was supposed to work. For the next 2 hours, Ryan laid out the entire conspiracy. How Blackwood had approached him at a bar near his office, how the man had shown him the fabricated evidence against Lila, how Sophia had been introduced as a freelance actress who specialized in this kind of work. He told me it would last 3 months, Ryan said. Long enough for the affair to become public and destroy my reputation. Then Sophia would disappear, I would lose my job, and Lila would divorce me. Blackwood said she would be better off without me anyway. Did you believe that? James asked. Ryan looked down at his hands. Part of me did. Our marriage wasn't perfect. I thought maybe she would be happier starting over. So you decided to make that choice for her, Elena said disgustedly. I was trying to save her. You were trying to save yourself from having to make a hard choice, Elena corrected. Instead of telling your wife the truth and letting her decide how to handle it, you decided to handle it yourself. Ryan knew she was right. Even with the best intentions, he had treated Lila like she was too weak or too stupid to handle the truth about Blackwood's threats. Can you help me find her? He asked. Elena sighed. Mr. Mitchell, your wife is one of the smartest, most determined people I've ever met. If she doesn't want to be found, we're not going to find her. But if she's planning something dangerous, then we better hope she's smarter than Blackwood thinks she is. That evening, Ryan sat in his empty apartment and tried to figure out how his life had gone so wrong. 6 months ago, he had been a married man with a successful career and a future to look forward to. Now he was unemployed, getting divorced, and his wife was missing. All because he had been too proud to tell her the truth. His phone rang at midnight. Unknown number. Hello? Ryan. Lila's voice was quiet, tired. Lila. Thank God. Where are you? Are you safe? I'm safe, she said. For now. Come home. We can fix this. I can explain everything. I know about everything, Lila said. I know about Blackwood's threats, about the fake evidence, about Sophia being paid to seduce you. Ryan felt relief and terror in equal measure. Then you know I was trying to protect you. I know you thought you were protecting me, Lila corrected. But Ryan, you made that decision without me. You chose to destroy our marriage instead of trusting me to help you fight. I'm sorry, Ryan said, and he meant it more than he had ever meant anything. I know I messed up. I know I hurt you. But we can get through this together. No, Lila said quietly. We can't. Lila, please. I'm calling to tell you that it's over. The divorce, the threats, all of it. Blackwood won't be bothering either of us anymore. What do you mean? I mean, I finished what you started 3 years ago. Richard Blackwood is going to pay for what he's done to us and to all the other families he's destroyed. The line went dead. Ryan tried calling back, but the number was disconnected. He tried her cell phone, but it went straight to a voicemail message saying the number was no longer in service. Lila had vanished again, but this time, Ryan had the terrible feeling that she wasn't planning to come back. The story broke on Monday morning. Prominent developer arrested in marriage manipulation scheme, read the headline on the front page of the city newspaper. The article, written by investigative journalist Sarah Chin, detailed years of Richard Blackwood's elaborate revenge plots against men who had crossed him in business. Ryan read the article in his empty apartment, his coffee growing cold as he absorbed the scope of what had been uncovered. The FBI had raided Blackwood's offices over the weekend, seizing computers, financial records, and communications that proved the existence of what agents were calling a systematic campaign of domestic terrorism. According to the article, an anonymous source had provided the FBI with detailed evidence of Blackwood's activities, including financial records, recorded conversations, and testimony from multiple victims. The source had also provided evidence that Blackwood had used threats and coercion to force some of his targets to participate in their own destruction. Ryan's phone rang as he finished reading. James Bennett's name appeared on the screen. Have you seen the news? James asked without preamble. I'm reading it now, Ryan said. How did this happen? Your wife happened, James said. She disappeared for 3 days, and when she came back, she had enough evidence to bring down Blackwood's entire operation. Where did she get the evidence? That's the million-dollar question. The FBI won't say, but I have a theory. James explained that Sophia Martinez had been found dead in her apartment Sunday morning, an apparent suicide. She had left behind a detailed confession of her role in Blackwood's schemes, along with recordings of conversations with Blackwood and his associates. You think Lila got to Sophia? Ryan asked. I think your wife convinced a young woman who was being used and manipulated to do the right thing, James said. But we'll probably never know for sure. The article mentioned that Sophia had been one of at least 6 women employed by Blackwood to seduce and manipulate his targets. In her confession, she detailed how she had been recruited from an escort service, trained to be the perfect mistress, and paid to destroy marriages and careers. But there was more. Sophia's confession also revealed that Blackwood's revenge plots weren't just about settling old scores. They were about eliminating competition and silencing critics who might interfere with his business dealings. He was using personal destruction as a business strategy, James explained. Destroy someone's marriage and reputation, and they're too busy putting their life back together to cause you any more problems. Ryan felt sick. How many people did he destroy? At least 12 that we know of. Probably more. The article went on to detail how Blackwood's scheme worked. Young women would be recruited and trained, then deployed to specific targets. The affairs would be carefully documented and then revealed in ways designed to cause maximum damage to the men's careers and reputations. But here's the part that's really going to interest you, James said. According to the FBI, they've been investigating Blackwood for months. Someone had been feeding them information, building a case from the inside. Lila? No. Someone with access to Blackwood's inner circle. Someone who knew about all the victims, all the schemes. Ryan was confused. Who? David Harrison. The name hit Ryan like a physical blow. Harrison was the man who had threatened Lila, who had offered her money to disappear. Harrison was working for the FBI? Ryan asked. For 2 years. He was the one gathering evidence, recording conversations, building the case. When your wife disappeared, Harrison contacted the FBI and told them she was in danger. That's when they decided to move. Ryan tried to process this. So when Harrison came to see Lila, he was trying to get her to safety. Blackwood had ordered him to eliminate her as a threat, but instead of hurting her, Harrison was trying to protect her. Then where is she now? In federal protection, I assume. At least until Blackwood's trial is over. Ryan hung up and read the article again, trying to understand what had really happened. According to the news report, Richard Blackwood was facing charges of conspiracy, fraud, extortion, and racketeering. If convicted, he could spend the rest of his life in prison. But the article raised as many questions as it answered. How had Lila convinced Sophia to confess? Where had she been for 3 days? And most importantly, was she planning to come back? His phone rang again. This time it was Elena Rodriguez. I just got off the phone with the FBI, she said. They want to interview you about your involvement in Blackwood's scheme. Am I in trouble? Not if you tell them the truth. They understand that you were coerced, but they need your testimony to make sure Blackwood goes away for life. What about Lila? Elena paused. What about her? Where is she? Is she safe? Mr. Mitchell, your wife is probably the safest person in the country right now. She just brought down one of the most powerful men in the state. But when will I see her again? That's up to her, Elena said gently. The divorce proceedings are still active. She might decide she wants to finish what she started. Over the next few days, more details emerged. Sofia Martinez had been recruited from a high-end escort service in Las Vegas, trained in seduction and manipulation, and deployed against specific targets chosen by Blackwood. She had been paid not just for her services but for her silence. According to her confession, Sophia had begun to have second thoughts about her role in destroying marriages. She had tried to quit several times, but Blackwood had threatened her family in Phoenix. She was trapped in a life she never wanted, destroying people she had no grudge against. The confession also revealed that Ryan had been specifically targeted because of his previous accusations against Blackwood. The developer hadn't forgotten or forgiven, and he had waited 3 years to get his revenge. He wanted to destroy you completely, Elena explained during one of their conversations. Your marriage, your career, your reputation, everything. The affair was just the beginning. What was supposed to happen next? Sophia was supposed to get pregnant. Claim you were the father. Make it public in the most humiliating way possible. Ryan felt his stomach turn. Pregnant. She was taking fertility drugs. Blackwood wanted to make sure your wife would never take you back, even if she wanted to. The scope of Blackwood's cruelty was breathtaking. He hadn't just wanted to hurt Ryan, he had wanted to destroy him so completely that he could never recover. But Sophia's death had ended all of that. In her final confession, she had expressed remorse for her role in the scheme and hoped that her testimony would help convict Blackwood. She saved a lot of people, Elena said. Including you. On Thursday, a week after Blackwood's arrest, Ryan received an unexpected visitor. James Bennett knocked on his apartment door at 6 p.m., carrying a manila envelope. These are for you, James said, handing over the envelope. Inside were divorce papers. Final papers already signed by Lila and approved by a judge. It's over, James said simply. She's granted you a no-fault divorce. You keep your pension and your personal belongings. She keeps the house, the joint savings, and her consulting income. That's it. That's it. She's not asking for alimony, and she's not claiming any of your individual assets. Ryan looked at the papers. After everything that had happened, after all the lies and betrayals and manipulation, it was ending with a simple signature on a legal document. Did she say anything? About why she decided to end it this way? James hesitated. She said she wanted both of you to have a chance to start over. Clean slate. I don't want a clean slate, Ryan said. I want to fix what I broke. Mr. Mitchell, some things can't be fixed. Sometimes the best thing you can do is accept responsibility for your mistakes and try to do better next time. There won't be a next time. Not without her. James looked at him with something that might have been sympathy. Maybe that's what you need to learn from this. Maybe next time you'll choose trust over protection. After James left, Ryan sat in his apartment reading the divorce papers over and over. 5 years of marriage, reduced to legal language about asset division and debt responsibility. But tucked into the back of the envelope was a handwritten note in Lila's careful script. Ryan, I know you thought you were protecting me and I know you're sorry. But trust is like a mirror. Once it's broken, you can put the pieces back together, but you'll always see the cracks. I need to build a life where I don't have to see those cracks every day. I hope you understand. I hope you find happiness. Ryan read the note 3 times, then carefully folded it and put it in his wallet. It was the last communication he would ever receive from his ex-wife, and he wanted to keep it close. Outside his window, the sun was setting on what had been the strangest and most painful week of his life. Richard Blackwood was in federal custody, facing charges that would likely put him away forever. Sophia Martinez was dead, her final act one of redemption rather than destruction. And Lila was somewhere safe, building a new life without him. Ryan had wanted to protect her, but in the end she had been the one who saved them both. 6 months after Richard Blackwood's arrest, Ryan sat in a coffee shop downtown reading about the trial verdict. Guilty on all counts. Life in federal prison without the possibility of parole. The article included interviews with some of Blackwood's victims, men whose marriages and careers had been destroyed by elaborate revenge schemes. All of them expressed relief that their tormentor would never hurt anyone else. Ryan wasn't interviewed for the article. He had testified during the trial, telling the jury about the threats against Lila and his decision to participate in the fake affair. The prosecutor had portrayed him as another victim, manipulated and coerced into betraying his own marriage. The defense had painted him as a willing participant who chose adultery over honesty. Both portrayals were partially true. Since the divorce, Ryan had been living quietly in his small apartment, working at a new architectural firm that specialized in affordable housing. The pay was less than his previous job, but the work felt meaningful in a way that designing strip malls never had. He had tried dating once. A nice woman from work had asked him to dinner, and he had said yes out of loneliness rather than genuine interest. The evening had been pleasant enough, but when she invited him back to her apartment, he had politely declined and never called her again. The truth was that he wasn't ready to trust anyone else with his heart. More importantly, he wasn't sure anyone should trust him with theirs. The therapy sessions helped. Dr. Sarah Martinez, no relation to Sophia, was a marriage counselor who specialized in helping people understand why their relationships had failed. Ryan saw her every Thursday at 2 p.m., working through the guilt and shame that had consumed him since the divorce. "You made a terrible decision," Dr. Martinez had told him during their first session. "But you made it for understandable reasons. The key is learning from it so you don't make the same mistake again." "What if I don't get another chance?" Ryan had asked. "Then you focus on becoming the kind of person who deserves another chance," she had replied. That had become his goal. Not to win Lila back, he understood that ship had sailed, but to become someone who would handle things differently next time. He had started volunteering at a legal aid clinic, helping low-income families navigate housing disputes. It was his way of trying to balance the scales, to do something positive with the skills that had once been used for purely commercial purposes. He had also tried to find Lila just to make sure she was okay. But it was like she had vanished completely. Her old job said she had resigned and left no forwarding address. Her sister claimed she didn't know where Lila had gone. Even Elena Rodriguez, when Ryan had finally worked up the courage to call her, said she hadn't heard from her former client. "Some people need to disappear completely to heal," Elena had told him. Maybe that's what she needed. Ryan understood, but it didn't make it easier. Sometimes he would drive past their old house, now owned by a young couple with 2 small children, and wonder if Lila missed it. He would see women with her build or her hair color and feel his heart skip, only to be disappointed when they turned around. The hardest part was the silence. For 7 years, Lila had been the person he shared everything with. Good news, bad news, random thoughts, stupid jokes, all of it had gone to her first. Now he had no one to tell when he got a promotion at work, or when he finally learned to make decent coffee, or when he saw a movie she would have loved. He had friends, but they felt distant now. Most of them had taken sides during the divorce, and even the ones who tried to stay neutral seemed uncomfortable around him. He was a reminder that marriages could implode, that people you trusted could betray you in spectacular ways. His family tried to be supportive, but they didn't really understand what had happened. His mother kept suggesting he should put himself out there and find someone new. His father offered practical advice about starting over. His sister sent him articles about moving on after divorce. None of them grasped that he wasn't mourning just the end of his marriage, he was mourning the person he had thought he was. The man who would never cheat, never lie, never put his own fear ahead of his wife's autonomy. That man had turned out to be a fiction. The trial had brought some closure. Seeing Blackwood convicted and sentenced had felt like justice, not just for Ryan and Lila but for all the families the man had destroyed. During his victim impact statement, Ryan had spoken about the importance of trust in relationships and the devastating consequences of manipulation and deceit. Richard Blackwood didn't just attack marriages, he had told the court. He attacked the fundamental belief that people can be honest with each other. He made us doubt not just our spouses but ourselves. The statement had been cathartic, but it hadn't healed the wounds. The real healing came slowly, through therapy and volunteer work and the gradual rebuilding of his sense of self. Ryan began to understand that his decision to participate in Blackwood's scheme hadn't just been about protecting Lila, it had been about protecting himself from having to face an impossible choice. He had taken the path that seemed easier in the moment, not realizing that it would lead to consequences far worse than anything Blackwood could have threatened. "You were afraid," Dr. Martinez had explained. "Afraid of seeing your wife hurt, afraid of losing your career, afraid of not being able to protect the people you loved. Fear makes us do stupid things." "But other people face fear without betraying their families," Ryan had protested. "Other people face different fears," she had countered. "The question isn't whether you made the right choice, you clearly didn't. The question is whether you can learn from that choice." A year after the divorce, Ryan moved to a larger apartment in a different part of town. Not because he was ready to move on, but because he was tired of living in a space that felt like punishment. The new place had better light and a small balcony where he could grow herbs. It was the kind of apartment he and Lila might have chosen together if they were starting over as newlyweds. That thought no longer made him cry, which felt like progress. He had learned to cook real meals instead of surviving on takeout and frozen dinners. He had joined a hiking group that met on weekends. He had even bought a dog, a rescue terrier named Buster, who needed as much healing as Ryan did. Slowly, carefully, he was building a life that felt sustainable if not exactly happy. But he still thought about Lila every day. He wondered if she had moved far away or stayed local. If she had changed careers or found new ways to use her marketing skills. If she had met someone who was worthy of her trust. He hoped she had. Despite everything, despite the pain and guilt and regret, he wanted her to be happy. Sometimes he imagined running into her at a coffee shop or a grocery store. In these fantasies, she would look healthy and content, maybe holding hands with a man who looked like he knew how lucky he was. Ryan would nod politely, maybe exchange a few pleasant words, and then walk away knowing that she had built a better life without him. It was the kind of ending he could live with. The alternative, that she was somewhere struggling or hurting or unable to trust again, was too painful to contemplate. So he focused on becoming the kind of man who deserved forgiveness, even if he would never receive it. The kind of man who would choose honesty over protection, trust over control, courage over fear. The kind of man Lila had thought she married. It was too late for their marriage, but maybe it wasn't too late for him. 2 years after the divorce was finalized, Lila Mitchell, who had legally changed her name back to Lila Stevens, stood in the kitchen of her new home, looking out at the garden she had spent months planning and planting. The house was smaller than the one she had shared with Ryan, but it felt more like home than anywhere she had lived in years. She had moved to Portland, Oregon, drawn by the city's reputation for reinvention and its distance from everything that had happened. The marketing consulting business she had started was thriving, built on referrals from clients who appreciated her combination of strategic thinking and genuine care for their success. The past 2 years had not been easy. The first 6 months after leaving had been the hardest, filled with therapy sessions, sleepless nights, and the slow, painful process of learning to trust her own judgment again. Dr. Rebecca Chin, her therapist in Portland, had helped her work through the complex emotions surrounding Ryan's betrayal. It wasn't just anger at his deception, it was anger at herself for not seeing the signs, for being so focused on work that she had missed the gradual erosion of their marriage. "You can't blame yourself for not noticing manipulation that was designed to be invisible," Dr. Chin had reminded her repeatedly. Richard Blackwood was a professional at this. He had practice. But the hardest part had been forgiving Ryan. Not because she wanted to reconcile, that ship had sailed the moment she found him in their bed with another woman, but because carrying anger was exhausting. "He thought he was protecting you," Dr. Chin had said during one of their sessions. "That doesn't excuse what he did, but it explains it." Sometimes understanding someone's motivations is the key to letting go of resentment. Lila had resisted this idea at first. She wanted to stay angry at Ryan, wanted to nurture her sense of betrayal because it felt justified. But eventually, she realized that forgiveness wasn't about excusing his behavior, it was about freeing herself from the weight of carrying anger. The process had taken time, but gradually she had been able to think about Ryan without feeling sick. She could remember good moments from their marriage without immediately thinking about how they had ended. She could even acknowledge that he had been trapped in an impossible situation, even if she didn't agree with how he had handled it. Understanding didn't mean forgetting. It meant accepting what had happened and choosing to move forward anyway. The move to Portland had been part of that process. She needed space, physical and emotional, to figure out who she was when she wasn't Ryan's wife or Blackwood's target. She needed to remember what it felt like to make decisions based on what she wanted rather than what other people expected from her. The first year had been lonely. She worked constantly, partly because she needed to build her business but mostly because work was easier than facing the silence of her empty house. She went on exactly 3 dates, all disasters that reminded her why she wasn't ready for a relationship. But slowly she had begun to build a community. She joined a hiking group, started volunteering at a literacy program, took cooking classes where she finally learned to make more than basic pasta. She made friends gradually, other women who had survived divorces, entrepreneurs who understood the challenges of building a business, neighbors who invited her to barbecues and book clubs. None of them knew the full story of why she had moved to Portland. As far as they were concerned, she was simply a woman who had gotten divorced and decided to start fresh. Which was true enough. The turning point had come 14 months ago when she met James. She had been working late in a coffee shop downtown when a man at the next table asked if he could borrow her phone charger. They struck up a conversation about the book she was reading, which led to a discussion about favorite authors, which somehow evolved into a 2-hour conversation about everything and nothing. James Bennett was in Portland for a legal conference, he explained. He specialized in family law back east, helping people navigate some of the worst moments of their lives. Lila had nearly choked on her coffee when he told her his name. "Is something wrong?" he had asked, concerned. "No," she had said, laughing at the impossibility of it. I think we've met before. Professionally." It took James a moment to place her. She looked different with shorter hair and a more relaxed wardrobe, but when he did, his expression shifted from friendly interest to professional concern. "Lila Stevens. You were Lila Mitchell when I knew you." "I was. How are you doing?" "Really?" Something about the genuine concern in his voice had broken down her defenses. Instead of giving him the polite response she usually offered when people asked how she was doing, she told him the truth. "Some days are better than others," she had admitted. "But I'm getting there." They had talked for another hour about healing and starting over and the challenge of learning to trust again. James shared his own story, a divorce several years earlier that had led him to specialize in family law. "I wanted to help other people navigate the process better than I had," he explained. When he asked if she would like to have dinner the next night, Lila's first instinct was to say no. She wasn't ready to date anyone, especially not someone who knew the worst details of her previous marriage. But something about James felt safe. Maybe it was because he had already seen her at her lowest point and hadn't judged her. Maybe it was because he understood the legal and emotional complexities of divorce better than most people. Or maybe it was simply that she was tired of being alone. "Just dinner," she had said. "As friends." "Just dinner," he had agreed. That dinner had led to long phone calls after James returned home. He was based in Boston, which felt like a safe distance, far enough that she couldn't get too attached too quickly, close enough that they could visit occasionally. For months they were just friends who talked on the phone every few days and texted occasionally. James would tell her about interesting cases without violating client confidentiality, and she would update him on her business and her life in Portland. Gradually their conversations became more personal. James told her about his ex-wife, who had left him for his law partner. Lila shared her fears about trusting anyone again, her anger at herself for missing the signs of Ryan's distress, her confusion about whether she was healing or just hiding. "Healing isn't linear," James had told her during one late-night conversation. "Some days you'll feel like you've moved on completely. Other days you'll feel like you're back at square one. That's normal. How do you know when you're ready to try again? When the idea of being with someone feels like a choice rather than a need," he had said. "When you're not looking for someone to complete you, but someone to share your already complete life with." It had taken Lila 6 more months to reach that point. James had visited Portland twice and she had gone to Boston once. Each visit felt natural and comfortable, like spending time with someone she had known for years. He was funny and kind and patient with her sometimes irrational fears about relationships. More importantly, he was honest. When she asked direct questions about his feelings or his intentions, he gave direct answers. When she needed space to process emotions or memories, he gave her space without making her feel guilty about it. 3 months ago, when James had accepted a position with a Portland law firm, Lila had realized she was ready to see where their relationship might lead. Now, as she stood in her kitchen watching him play with the rescue dog she had adopted, a golden retriever mix named Luna, she felt something she hadn't experienced in years: contentment. James wasn't Ryan. He didn't have Ryan's easy charm or his talent for making her laugh until her sides hurt. But he also didn't have Ryan's tendency to make decisions for her or his fear of difficult conversations. When James had a problem, he talked to her about it. When he was stressed about work, he asked for her support instead of withdrawing. When they disagreed about something, they worked through it together instead of one of them just giving in to avoid conflict. It was a different kind of love than what she had shared with Ryan. Quieter, more solid, built on friendship and mutual respect rather than passion and shared history. "What are you thinking about?" James asked, coming up behind her and wrapping his arms around her waist. "Just this," she said, leaning back against him. "How different everything is now. Good different or scary different?" "Good different," she said without hesitation. "Definitely good different." They were taking things slowly, probably slower than either of them really wanted. James had his own apartment across town, and they spent maybe 3 nights a week together. Lila still needed her space, and James understood that without taking it personally. But they were building something real and sustainable. Something based on choice rather than circumstance, honesty rather than protection, trust rather than fear. "I have something to tell you," James said, and Lila felt her stomach tighten with automatic anxiety. "What?" "The Portland firm wants to make me a partner. It would mean staying here permanently." Lila turned in his arms to look at his face. "How do you feel about that?" "I feel like Portland has been good to me," he said with a smile. "I've found some things here that I didn't expect to find." "Like what?" "Like a woman who makes me want to be the best version of myself. Like a life that feels honest and real and worth fighting for." Lila felt tears prick her eyes. Not sad tears, but tears of gratitude for how much her life had changed, for how much she had healed, for this man who saw her completely and loved her anyway. "I love you," she said, and meant it in a way that felt different from how she had loved Ryan. This love was cleaner, less complicated, built on who they actually were rather than who they thought they should be. "I love you too," James said and kissed her forehead. "But no pressure about the partnership thing. I want to make sure you're comfortable with me sticking around permanently." Lila laughed. "James, I bought a house. I started a business. I have a dog and a garden and a book club. I'm not going anywhere." "Good," he said. "Because I'm not either." As the sun set over her new life, Lila felt a peace she hadn't experienced in years. She thought about Ryan sometimes, wondered if he was doing okay, hoped he had learned from their shared disaster and found his own path to healing. But she no longer wished their marriage had survived. She understood now that some things needed to break completely before they could be rebuilt into something better. She had lost a husband, but she had found herself. She had lost a life she thought she wanted, but she had built a life she actually loved. And sometimes, that was the best kind of revenge against the people who tried to destroy you, not fighting back but moving forward. Not seeking justice but creating joy. Richard Blackwood had wanted to destroy her marriage and her happiness. In the end, he had freed her to find both in a way that was stronger and more authentic than anything she had known before. As James helped her finish making dinner and Luna begged for scraps, Lila reflected on how far she had come. 2 years ago, she had been a woman whose world had collapsed around her. Now she was a woman who had rebuilt that world according to her own specifications. The past would always be part of her story, but it no longer defined her future. And that, she thought as James made her laugh with a terrible joke, was the best possible ending she could have asked for.